We don't waste any time around here.
What did we drink last time?
Can I just have a time?
Exactly this.
Was it this?
Yeah, I
We're gonna
remember
talk-
the bottle.
We're going to talk about tradition today, Peter. I'm hoping to start a tradition here in these heady days of Bitcoin.
You do remember I'm not a single malt guy,
Yeah, you know what though?
especially the peaty ones.
That's all right. You said you at least told me last time that you enjoyed it. So
I did. I got to say it was okay actually.
maybe you're just being kind.
I got to drive
No,
for just
it
a
is
tiny
okay.
bit for me.
So
There's your tiny bit.
Thank you.
last time we recorded an episode,
Yes,
Brett Morrison, great Bitcoiner, great guy,
love Brett.
had bought me this whiskey, Port Charlotte, and so I brought it to our recording, and we all had a nice drink. And
When was that? Was that the one in Malibu?
It was in Malibu, beautiful place.
A couple of years ago.
A couple years ago, 2 years ago,
Damn.
almost exactly 2 years ago. We learned that night that Jeremy, who was working for you then, was a huge single malt whiskey guy. And on the spot that night, you basically bought him an all expenses tour to Scotland,
I did. I did.
which is indicative either of your generosity or the fact that you probably thought it was still a bull market, as many of us did.
No, listen. Look, one of the things I'm not very good at is conserving money, and I tend to. I feel I've been lucky in life, so I give a lot away. And,
Yeah.
and that's not from a position of extreme wealth or anything. It's I always feel like I've been lucky.
Hey, better to be
fortunate.
lucky than good. Better to be lucky.
And Jeremy, it was his dream holiday, and he had no way of going, and I could do that for him, and so I did.
It was amazing. You made him a very happy man that night.
Well,
Second thing that happened that
I
night.
feel like I should tell the story of when he returned from that trip.
Oh, please.
So listen, look. Oh, no, I might be in a dick. No, I'll tell you off camera.
Okay.
But
Fair enough.
I will like to say, Jeremy, thank you for the very generous gift you bought me after I sent you on your dream holiday at my expense.
Nice.
we'll
I'm
leave
sure.
it there.
we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there.
Jeremy doesn't work for us anymore.
No, I'm aware.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you if you'll humor me, the second thing that happened that night was, I think it was Jack Dorsey opened up a Twitter Spaces, I think for the benefit of Erica Rhodes, if I'm remembering right, who's running for Congress. You had her on the show.
I did, yeah.
You were a supporter. I was a supporter. I had a very modest fundraiser for her at the time. And a guy named Dennis Porter managed to get himself up on stage and ask a question and somehow masterfully just hijack that whole spaces and open his own space and suck all the viewers. It was like 10 or 20,000 people in that space onto his space. And I don't remember your exact words at the time, but it was something along the lines of "gotta respect the hustle."
Well, do you know what the thing about Dennis is? I've had Dennis. Dennis has come to Bedford, and so anyone who comes to Bedford who makes because it's not like, hey, buddy, do you want to come to see my football club in LA or New York or Sydney? It's not even London. It's like Bedford. We're at the arse end of nowhere. There's no reason to come to Bedford apart from to see me if you're my friend or see my football team. Dennis came. His amazing girlfriend came, and do you know what? She did this incredible thing. She ended up helping my dad lay out the kit, and honestly, they had a great time. Look, Dennis, I love you, Dennis. I'll say this: that man has got game. He will go for it, right? He will hustle, but you cannot take away from him what he's done. He's had a lot of wins. So,
I agreed. Just in those 2 years, I mean, now he's doing one of the key missions, which is helping continue to make America safe for Bitcoin, for mining, for Bitcoiners, which I think is one of the most important things.
He will become a politician. He will run for a governor. He will run for Senate, Congress, or something at some point. And I think he'll have built up the political capital for when he wants to do it.
Yeah, he's working on it. He's already come a long way in the last couple of years, and I look forward to seeing what great things he does in future.
You have a lot of got a good memory for that day. What was the price of Bitcoin at that point?
Ooh, what?
Oh, I think I know that too. I did a
you?
little prep.
Was that the same trip where I ended up leaving 3 large boxes at your house for? No, that was.
No, that was the same trip.
Was that the same
definitely.
trip?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if people appreciate the very tiny contribution I've made to the merchandising effort of Real Bedford.
Those boxes are now in Bedford, and there you are in your gear.
That's where
Yep.
you got it from. Took out of the
No,
boxes.
he only had jerseys. He only had jerseys.
Believe it or not, I didn't scalp any from those boxes.
You should have, man.
Yeah. No.
So it was March 22. So price was about.
Can I guess?
Go on.
I'm gonna guess like 40-ish.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I would have gone slightly higher.
It was like high 30s, 40.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So the episode title, I think, was "Don't Get Wrecked," and it was loosely based on an article I'd published on BTC Times, which was about not levering your Bitcoin. And yeah, I think within 2 months, price was down by half from that point.
Was that on the way up or on the way down?
On the way down.
That was
On the way down,
on the second.
That was
After the second.
Correct.
That was it. We didn't know that the bull market was over yet.
Although in hindsight, it looks so obvious.
When in hindsight,
The problem is when you have multiple 30% dips in a bull market. When it happens, even at 35, you're like, yeah, it's going to come back. We're still in the bull market. Boom, we were done.
That must have been. Would Luna have blown up then? Or was it just before?
it was before, I think.
Yeah.
I think it was after Elon had reversed himself on Bitcoin, right? Oh, it's bad for the environment or whatever he said.
Yeah,
he had
right.
bought and then done. But I think it was before Terra Luna.
Damn.
Do you mind if I reminisce a little more?
Please go ahead.
So it's a little over 5 years ago since I started writing Why Buy Bitcoin. Price was $3K at that point, and I was sweating bullets because I was underwater on my big purchase at the time.
Okay.
And so it was partly a test of my own thesis. And that summer, I was still working on the book. You emceed Bitcoin 2019 conference.
And the thing about that is all the conferences now, the MCs do like the morning or the afternoon of one day. I did the whole 2 days on my own.
Yeah.
Shout out to David Bailey and Callie Bailey. I think it's Callie who mainly respected me for that.
Yeah. No, you were on all the time, the whole time.
Do you know what? It in some ways is my favorite of the Bitcoin conferences because it was a good size. Do you remember how cool that building was?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It had the outdoor roof deck.
Yep.
Celsius had a booth.
Damn it.
Mashinsky, I had a conversation with Mashinsky. This was a while ago, obviously. I sat behind, I don't remember which talk it was. I sat next to Quiddim. I didn't know Brandon Quiddim. So he was very friendly, just introduced himself. I had no idea who he was. Lots of now household Bitcoin names are there. I met Dan Held, Tourtemeister pitched me his levered Bitcoin fund in great detail. I met Breedlove. I met Marty. I mean, it was an amazing experience. There was only, 2,000 or 3,000 people there.
Yeah, it was basically about the size of what Pacific was, right?
That sounds about right. Yeah,
and it
that's
feels
right.
a very similar vibe.
That's right. That's right. Pretty intimate, a lot of signal, not too much noise.
And now we have a conference every weekend, some multiple per weekend. It's grown so much.
Yeah, the industry, it's a lot changed. A lot changed in a long time. New companies have popped up. It was September of 2019 that I finally published Why Buy Bitcoin. And I did something I almost never do, which was somehow I'd heard about Corey, just about his existence. And I heard he was a LA guy, so I sent him a copy. And he invited me to this luncheon in Brentwood. So it was this venture capitalist. By the way, he was invited and he just said, show up. So the guy who was hosting had no idea who I was. He was very gracious about it. And it was a bunch of middle-aged dudes. They were all his investors in the fund. He was about to relocate to New Zealand, partly for tax purposes, partly for family purposes. And Corey and I just painted the room orange. Those guys didn't know what hit them. They probably all they remember of that event was two lunatics, talking about Bitcoin. And but Corey asked me a coffee afterward, and I immediately could tell he was going to do something substantial and great in Bitcoin. And at that time, Swan was not Swan, it was Give Bitcoin. But he pitched me the idea of a Bitcoin exchange with, quote, no sell button.
You know, he interviewed me for a job once.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that before.
Did you know about this?
No, I didn't.
This is probably
Pre-Swan, presumably.
pre-Swan. God, I can't. You'll remember the details better. It was in LA. It was, the podcast was still young. I didn't have much in the way of sponsors, and I was running out of money from when I got rid of my advertising agent, divorced. And I was like thinking, shit, I need a job. And I think he interviewed me. But I'm trying to think, was that before I started the podcast? It was very, very early. It might even been before I had. I can't remember. But yeah, he did once.
Before you flew to Japan, before
Yeah.
the Gox, the Carpellis interview.
That was the second trip to Japan. First one was
I
Roger
know that.
Ver, episode 18, was that?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, man. A lot of water under the bridge. And so I think it was a couple years later that Corey asked me to join the board, and I accepted. And then the guy who was building the financial advisor product for Swan Advisor Services, left. And so we had a chat and decided, okay, I guess it's going to be me that has to build it. And obviously, all credit to the team. Dan Webb basically built the thing, and Ryan Flynn sold it, and tremendous team at Swan, Jeremy Showalter. But fast forward to today, we're in a bull market. I don't know about you. I'm feeling a little exhausted already. Lots going on. That Swan investment now might be worth quite a bit. So I'm thinking about portfolio management, risk management decisions.
There you go.
Would be prudent to cut it back. But when number goes up, your portfolio gets realigned for you, and you have to decide whether to whether to adjust or just let it ride. And so got that, and then obviously joined the OnRamp team with my friend, my pretty long-term Bitcoin friend now, Jesse Myers, aka Creases BTC.
We've had him on the show.
Yeah, so he and Michael Tanguma are building something pretty cool. I'm excited to lend a hand in the advisor space.
I crashed their happy hour in London.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Was it a classy event?
It was a good pub with some good beers.
Perfect.
The British way. As you can see, I've known Michael for some time. I like Michael a lot.
Yeah. No, he's very sharp. He's very talented. He has a vision, and he's executing on it, which is awesome.
I feel like you've got a whole list of things here that you're reminiscent on here.
Yeah,
I don't want to go into my questions. What's on your list?
Yeah. No, look, I mean, okay, so for OnRamp, I started a pod, the Scarce Assets Show. Mm-hmm. We Preston was the first guest. Then I had Jeff Booth. By the way, Jesse and I are co-hosting on this thing. He's riding shotgun with me. Uh-huh. We had Lynn. We had Pierre and Morgan Richard. Just recorded with Gladstein and Breedlove, and so that's fun. So I've learned from the best over here,
mate. Gotta keep grinding. Be patient.
That's it. And so I got that going on, which is fun. And just watching very excited Bitcoiners. Had my buddy Damien. So speaking of people who used to work for you, Damien Somerset did some production work for you years ago.
Yeah, he used to do some of the editing and the camera work when we just started doing video. He worked. It was only for a short period of time, but he worked for us.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah,
great guy, great Bitcoiner. He does work now for the Progressive Bitcoiner, which I know is an angle that you're keen on.
Well, no, it's not that an angle I'm keen on as like some like thing I'm dedicated to. It's more that we just needed to balance the voices. And so we made, it was like 2 years ago now, I think, or a year and a half ago, we just put a shout out, say, where are the progressive Bitcoiners? We've got a lot of conservative Bitcoiners, we've got a lot of libertarian Bitcoiners, we need some progressives. And they all came in the woodwork, and we interviewed a bunch at the same time. Mark Goodwin was one.
Yeah, that's how we met Mark. He's crushing it.
Yeah, Mark's absolutely crushing it. Then the guys obviously launched Progressive Bitcoiner. Jason Mayer came out and wrote the Progressive Gates of Bitcoin.
Yes.
Which I wrote the forward to.
Well done, sir.
You're welcome. Did you read it?
I have started it, but not finished
Have
it.
you read
Skip
the
the
forward?
forward.
Did you skip the forward?
I'll be honest. No. Let's see. I think, yeah, I probably did skip the forward.
So do you know what I said? I'll tell you what I said. I said this book is the most important Bitcoin. This most important book about Bitcoin for conservatives.
Yeah.
Well, there's someone writing the conservative case for Bitcoin now. I can't remember his name.
That sounds easier. That sounds easier.
Yeah.
A less difficult
government.
assignment. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I did a book swap with him actually at Pacific Bitcoin, but I need to read the whole thing.
You should just read the forward. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
When was the first show we made with Andrew? Andy.
Very, very proper. Let me have a
Yeah.
look.
It was probably was MicroStrategy, and it probably was
It was.
2020,
Go on, try and get the month.
late 2020, because Sailor started getting active, mid to late 2020. I don't know, October, November, maybe.
December, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember the title?
MicroStrategy something moonshot.
Bitcoin Moonshot.
See, I did my homework before I showed up today, right?
That's pretty funny though, really. Because Moonshot, Moonshot implies it's a gamble. So it's a bit unfair. I think Michael Saylor has the conviction that he is right and he's continuing to do what he did. But either way, it felt like a moonshot. We can say now, 4 years on, fucking right. Crushed it. Killed it.
Seems to be going well for him.
Yeah.
Seems like the right strategy. Yeah, I had
It's not a micro strategy, that's the point.
it's MacroStrategy.
Macro.
One of his entities, I think the entity that owns the Bitcoin is actually called MacroStrategy,
Yeah.
right? Which is genius.
Oh, is it?
Genius naming. Yeah, that was so that summer, I don't know, somebody spotted. I think it might have been Matt Walsh, Nick Carter's partner. He had that spotted when they'd actually bought it. But the press release had come out and it was talking about, we're examining options for our treasury, right? Which may include, I don't know, something other than treasuries and maybe gold and maybe some Bitcoin. Oh, hey now. And then they invested the treasury. And then he cleverly sort of managed the existing shareholder base, right? Because if you were an investor in MicroStrategy, you were owning a business intelligence software stock. You didn't think you were owning a Bitcoin stock. So he did a tender offer, to at a nice premium to take out the existing shareholders while he was, advancing that thing. And
Should
then
I explain what that allowed them to do? It allowed people to get out if they didn't buy the Bitcoin move, right?
yeah, exactly. Because if you're a shareholder, it's a publicly traded stock and it has been for decades. So yes, you can always trade in and out technically. But of course, if you're a large chunky holder, it may take you some time to scale in or out of the position. So if you're an investor and you're thinking, oh, I don't want a Bitcoin stock, I want just a business intelligence or software stock, then he gave shareholders an opportunity to get out. Even if you owned a chunk of it, you still got out at a premium. Like if you owned too much to just trade out of easily, still the company was willing to take you out at a premium.
And that would have been a bad move.
Correct. Anyone who took that deal, and some people did take that deal. I don't remember what percent of the shareholder base took that deal. But then it was it was sometime in the fall, I think, that I did a Swan Signal episode and threw out the possibility that, because I had glanced at the balance sheet and I saw that it was a cash flow positive company, and I threw out the possibility that, this guy could maybe borrow, maybe could issue some debt to buy some Bitcoin. And then, I don't know, a month or two later, of course, so began the issuance of convertible bonds. And I didn't think, it hadn't occurred to me that he would do convertible debt. I thought he'd just do normal debt.
Let's explain the difference between those two then. Then just explain the game. What's he up to?
Yeah. He is up to accumulating more Bitcoin than he otherwise could have by issuing capital to the public markets. And there's several forms of capital that are available to companies that want to raise money. So how do you raise money if you're a company? Well, you can borrow. You can borrow from a bank. You can borrow from the bond market. You issue a bond, people buy the bond, they're your lenders. You can issue equity. By the way, he has issued equity. He has sold portions of MicroStrategy company, the stock, and use the proceeds to buy Bitcoin. Now, a convertible bond is a tweener. It's a hybrid between debt and equity. And it's technically debt, except for it has a feature, an embedded call option, whereby if the stock price goes up enough, as a bondholder, you can convert your bond, which is a fixed dollar claim, into an ownership stake, an equity stake in the company. And usually that conversion premium is between 25 and 40% above the current stock price. And so he has done that in size. He just completed 2 deals right in a row. I think just in the last week, right? Did an $800 million deal and a $500 million deal, if I'm not mistaken. And so, so anyone who's investing in that is saying, well, I like having a debt claim against the company because if either he's wrong about the price of Bitcoin or it takes longer to play out, like let's say, I don't know, it just takes longer for Bitcoin to continue advancing. Maybe it takes more than a 4-year cycle this time for whatever reason. I have a debt claim against the company and I have a maturity. So like if it really goes off the rails, if it's a 5-year maturity, I come to the table and basically I can demand my money back. So I have downside protection.
How does he pay that back?
Well, that's the question. It's scenario analysis. So if, and it's smart, obviously, if all goes well, as it has done, and we have 4-year cycles, let's say cycles that are net upward and not much longer than 4 years, then issuing 5-year maturities is smart because he's bought himself a whole cycle and a little bit. But, if Bitcoin goes down and stays down for a long time, number one, and number two, if he can't bear the interest, cover the interest from the cash flows of the company, then he's got an issue. Now, the coupons on these things are tiny, right? They're less than 1%. So the interest burden is quite small, but it's harder to negotiate with a maturity. So this gets to, good kinds of leverage, bad kinds of leverage. The longer your maturity, the better. That's what a mortgage is, right? As long as you can make that interest payment, you got 30 years before you have to worry about a maturity, at least in the US, not so in the UK. That's a different thing. But for MicroStrategy and for Saylor, I think that the scenario in which you would have a problem is Bitcoin price goes down, stays down, and then he reaches a maturity. And even though his business is doing fine and his cash flows can cover the interest, his cash flows might not cover the maturity of that debt. And he may have to issue new equity and dilute the existing shareholder base or, take other action.
Okay.
And the other action would be sell Bitcoin, right?
It could be.
Well, it could be another loan.
It could be. Yeah. I mean, there's, he's a known quantity now. The company is
unlikely he sells Bitcoin.
Tens of billions of market cap. I thought I saw it's like a $30 billion market cap now or something.
Have a look.
Which I looked that up and I was thinking, gosh, is that right? It seems too high, but number went up. And the stock is trading now at a sizable premium, I think on the order of 70% or something to the value of the Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And so, by the way, people are looking at it as an investment. First of all, if you've been invested, hat tip, you've made a ton of money. I think, one of the things that's worth doing and thinking about as an investor is a sum of the parts analysis, right? Basically Wall Street 101. If you can split this business into the balance sheet Bitcoin plus the cash flowing business intelligence software business, which has a value, which is some multiple of cash flows. And then there's some additional premium right now. And that premium exists partly because we're in a bull market, partly because he now has a demonstrated track record of raising capital efficiently and effectively such that the number of coins per share is going up and the price is going up. So he's doing right by his investors. And so now he has credibility having done this through a cycle. I think that's one of the main reasons why there's a significant premium now in the stock is he has proven an adept capital allocator, right? It's the same reason, arguably, that Berkshire Hathaway trades at a big premium to its book value or its net asset value, is people look at the guy at the helm and they say, oh, this guy's pretty good at allocating capital. And maybe if I'm a shareholder, he'll do it cleverly and it'll be accretive to my investment in the long run.
But he's stacking up debts that have to be paid at some point.
Well, they only have to be paid if they don't convert to equity.
Okay. Does it convert is it an option to convert it? Or
an option.
It's an option.
Yeah.
So they could choose not to convert it.
You could.
Is that unlikely if there's the premium?
Yeah, and look, it's a fair question. I mean, it's been a long time. Well, first of all, I have not dug into the indentures on the new issues that he just did last week. And it's been a long time since I looked at the issues that he did, the convertible issues that he did in the last cycle. So there may be some period after which, the conversion option ends. I'm not sure off the top of my head. Yeah.
I mean, the only disaster scenario I see is there's one where he would be forced to sell Bitcoin to clear debts, because that could have a systemic impact on Bitcoin at some point.
We get cheap sats.
That's right. Good for the plebs who are stacking.
But it's
right?
quite the fucking play he's done.
Oh, it's amazing. There will be Harvard Business School case studies written about this. He will be in the mainstream history books if Bitcoin does what we all think it can. If it reaches its potential, high school history books will have the name Michael Saylor in them.
Are you surprised that other companies have done the same playbook?
That they have not yet?
Yeah.
I am a little surprised. I'll tell you what, I'm surprised in a sort of historical context, path dependence. In other words, I didn't think we'd see as savage downturn as we did in the last bear market. And I think that the way it went was he developed the playbook, he executed it, he delivered it right to CEOs. He held conferences. He said, send your CFOs to the conference. We'll tell you how it's done. And then I think the bear market came, and I'm sure those conversations were happening in boardrooms. And then with the downturn, it was like, okay, start over, reset the clock. And my guess is now those conversations are happening again, and CFOs and or CEOs, C-suite guys are going to their boards and saying, hey, look, it worked. And remember when we were talking about this a few years ago, and boards are saying, no, I don't remember, start over.
So do you think seeing him survive a bear market is going to change people's perception?
It has to, right? It has to. Some people's perception. That's the beauty of Bitcoin is the majority still ignore it, laugh at it, denigrate it, whatever. But some small percentage pay attention, do the homework, see an opportunity, see a way to enrich their shareholders and themselves. So yeah, I think it will happen. I'm not going to predict, how many or when, but it'll happen.
Because there are companies out there generating way more cash flow than MicroStrategy. And
Absolutely.
He's pulled off an incredible, what is it, like 30 mil a year? I could be completely wrong.
I think it's a bit higher. I think it's somewhere, you're talking about the operating business?
Yeah, profits.
I want to say it's like between 50 and 100 million. Okay. Don't quote me on it. Which is
maybe it was a quarter, 30 million a quarter.
Yeah,
that could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a real business.
Yeah.
But you're right that it's not the world's biggest business.
No,
it's not Apple. It's not, billions in cash. There are companies out there that generate billions in cash flow annually or more. Yeah. It's I've gotten out of the business of predicting what's the next country that will adopt it, or what's the next company, or
we'll cheer them in when they come.
Yeah, exactly. We've all made too many mistakes guessing who's next. It's better just to take it as it comes.
Well, it is super interesting though to watch what he's done and know that there will be other CFOs out there thinking, "Shit, if we'd have done that." And I think the same will happen with countries. And they're going to look at El Salvador and think, "Shit, we should have done that." But I still think the volatility scares people off. I still think there's people who think, yeah, but Bitcoin's still going to die, right?
there absolutely are people like that. Some of them are my clients.
Yeah.
I talk to them on a regular basis.
They don't understand it's going to go up forever.
Right. They are, yes, it's so hard to understand. And I always, I asked this question to Pierre the other day, which is, wind back the clock, I don't know, 10 years, because he was in it 10 years ago. I was not. And I asked him, does your conviction go up because of the track record of success of Bitcoin? Or does it go up because you've just lived through it? Fundamentally, it's part of your being for so long that you're just comfortable with it? Or is it some combination? And I think for some people, it's purely analytical. And for others, it's just the passage of time. And others, it's some combination of the two. And it's hard to know. It's hard to know even that even for yourself. I mean, some days I wake up and think, I think, wow, I had the thesis right. Pat on the back, good job. And then other days I think, maybe I just survived for long enough that who knows if the thesis was right, but this is the bet I've made and I'm just going with it.
Yeah. I think a little bit of doubt lingers on just because the longer you're in, the more your net worth really tends to be in Bitcoin, unless you're rebalancing, which I'm not because I'm a degenerate.
Right.
And so I'm pot committed to Bitcoin now in every single way possible: career, financing, life, football, hometown, like everything. And so there's if it was just like one of my investments and I worked still in advertising, I probably in some ways, I don't know if I'd have more or less conviction, but I'd have less fear. But it's everything. So now there's this little thing.
Hey, I respect a guy who's all in. I hope that notwithstanding your all-in bet, you just got some good news. This is my copy of the Wall Street Journal.
Okay, where'd you go there?
The paper of record for finance, which has a section on United Kingdom. Judge discredits Bitcoin claimant. Britain's High Court ruled Thursday that Australian computer scientist Craig Wright isn't, as he claimed for 8 years, quote, Satoshi Nakamoto, end quote, the pseudonymous creator of Bitcoin.
Ready to sing?
Do you have a copy of this? I'm sure you have many copies of many.
Craig Wright is not Satoshi.
In your office, Pete.
Craig Wright
The
is
lower
not
right, yeah.
Satoshi.
Yeah.
Tiny little thing.
Yeah, but still,
Fuck that.
Wall Street Journal.
You know what?
The news coverage has graduated from god awful to not terrible. I'm not going to say it's balanced or accurate, but it's improving slowly.
Listen, fuck Craig Wright.
I'm raising a glass, by the way.
Do you know what the interesting about Craig? I think the most fascinating part of the Craig Wright story is what now? What now? We've seen Ryan X. Charles, the fucking rat, come out today and call Craig Wright scammer. We've seen Calvin say, "I'm off on a big trip." We've had one tweet from Craig Wright saying, "Oh, I may appeal." No, you're not going to appeal, mate. You can't. One, he's broke. Two, I doubt the courts will allow him. Three, he's going to be in jail. But it's what happens now? What do all these people do? Will Calvin Ayre just disappear and just do some gambling stuff or whatever? What will Craig Wright do? I mean, if he doesn't, if he goes to jail, then what? BSV will die. There's no need for an enterprise blockchain. I don't know what nChain does, or I don't know what all the employees do, where the money's come from, but I assume it's Calvin pumping it in. But what happens now?
No idea. There are still fugitives, at least one of the three AC guys who I think are still on the lam in non-extradition countries. I mean, it's one thing to ask, how you're going to support yourself. The one thing we know, I know nothing about his finances at all. The one thing we know about anybody who was early enough in Bitcoin, likely has some coins stashed somewhere, somehow. Maybe he doesn't.
I just don't think Craig Wright does.
Yeah.
I think he's actually a fucking moron.
Yeah.
And
He might not.
No, this is why I think he had to sell his life story to like the rights to his life story to Calvin, and I think this is why Calvin's been his sugar daddy for so long. And that Calvin threat, I mean, you saw the email where Calvin's like threatening him, saying, you know, I'm going to cut you off and you'll be living out of a soup kitchen. Plus, even if he has some stuff put away, he's liable for everyone's legal costs. Everyone's, Copa's, mine. He owes Kleiman 140 million.
Wow.
Like,
As is Calvin, though. Is that right?
Calvin's is different. Calvin, yeah. I'm not going to say directly because I don't know, but is potentially liable for a number of the costs, a number of the lawsuits. I don't think Kleiman,
Okay.
interestingly, I don't think Kleiman. Certainly Copa, Holonaut's mine. But I would imagine Calvin's been very clever in the way he's hid and moved money around to avoid that. And that's also why I think he's disappearing.
Yeah, would make sense. Well, here's a hypothesis. It's probably a bad analogy, but you tell me. I think of the guy from The Wolf of Wall Street, the penny stock operator.
Belfort.
Jordan Belfort. I think he probably filed bankruptcy. He did prison time. Now he, I don't know, does inspirational
seminars.
speeches. I don't know, seminars.
Yeah, but
That could be years away, though.
yeah, I mean, I do think Craig Wright goes to jail. I just think he'll end up. I'm convinced he's going to end up being a pastor in some like African village, passing the hat around because he is a pastor. So he says. I think he'll have a. I think one or two things will happen. I think he'll have one of three. I'll go three scenarios. Another technology crypto grift would be one. There's enough cultists that will support that. Two, he goes to someone like Africa and ends up finding God, being a pastor, and realizes, the error of his ways. Or three, he ends up dead.
Interesting options. Yeah. Interesting options. He has attracted a flock once. Why not again?
I mean,
anyway, celebrate your great victory.
Do you know what the other thing about it? I find him fascinating. I spend more time fascinated about him than I do hating on him. Despite the fact he tried to destroy my fucking life. I would absolutely sit across from him and do another interview.
You would?
Yeah, I totally would.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd interview Calvin Ayre.
Wow.
Do you want to tell something funny? I have Calvin Ayre's phone number. I called him once, he didn't answer. So I just text him every 2 weeks in, I forgive you. He doesn't reply.
I love it. Hey, you're the bigger man. That's good. That's good.
Anyway, can we go back to your book? We've just been talking shit and saying nothing for about the last 45 minutes.
Twist my arm. Let's do it.
So you read a book, Why Buy Bitcoin? Anyone listen? You should buy the book and then you'll buy Bitcoin. How much has your thesis changed?
Yeah.
And have you changed how you explain it to people? Because we just made a show with Mark Moss, and I'm almost certainly going to go and change the way I tell it to people based just on that. But tell me yours first, and then I'll tell you.
Yeah, love to hear it. So, for the most part, the thesis has played out. I had set a 10-year price target in the book, which was, I think, $8 trillion or $400,000 a coin. And that was a 10-year target from 2019 when it was published. So, we're on the way, right? Another 5 years, 400K, not unreasonable. And we can, quibble about, well, is that like a cycle peak or is that like an average over a cycle? But I think we're in the zip code. One thing I did in the book, which was kind of cheeky, was I gave out 3 scenarios and I gave them equal weight. And the equal weight was 1/3 chance that it dies. Remember, this is 5 years ago. 1/3 chance that it's reached its potential and kind of doesn't go up or down. And then 1/3 chance that, it goes a lot higher. And so
definitely got to revisit those.
Yes.
Well, I'm surprised that you weighed them so heavily even then.
Yeah. Remember, this was pre-COVID. So already governments were, spending too much, but we hadn't really seen the extent of the strange stuff they would do to us. And and it was obviously, if the thing's 15 years old now, it's a third earlier in its life. So part of me also honestly I'd love to ask myself what I actually thought at the time. Part of me wanted to present this thing as kind of a long shot to investors, speculators, people, just to get them comfortable that like, look, you could, it could fail and you could lose your money. Don't risk more than you're willing to lose at that time. And I think that if I had come out on, more than likely it's going to be, the future reserve currency, most of the audience that I was approaching, which was clients and friends and family and sort of a little more normie tradfi, would have just dismissed it out of hands, right? They would have wrote it off as, oh, okay, this guy's a nutter. A nutter, as you like to say in the UK.
Nutter.
Yeah, nutter. And they would have just ignored it. So, but yes, today, obviously, I think it is greater than 50% chance that Bitcoin reaches its potential or some significant fraction of its potential. So I think that's the major change or update that I would do today.
What percent would you give on it failing?
Fairly. So, well, I guess it depends on what you mean by reaching its potential. I like to think, so like the no-brainer is going to outstrip gold. I don't know. 3-1 in favor. Odds, I'll say. I'm not going to go like 9-1. We'll say 3-1 in favor. Does it reach its potential and eat a big part of fiat, the debt markets, real estate? Monday, I'm giving a presentation to the local office of the Berkshire Hathaway real estate or realty agency. Got a friend that works there. He's like, you should come in. Now's a good time. Okay. And so I've been thinking about on the presentation, what percent of real estate am I going to tell them that it's going to eat? They're not going to like it, whatever percent I tell them. but
it's definitely not zero.
It's definitely not zero. Exactly, Danny. So, yeah, so in terms of reaching its potential and being, I don't know, millions of dollars per coin, I guess I say, do I say greater than 50-50? I guess I probably say greater than 50-50.
See, do you know what I say to that?
Tell
I
me.
say the only way you can figure that out is give a time frame to it because it's actually binary. It either goes down to like materially nothing and just like maintained by a few people as a toy, or it goes up forever.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
The middle case, the middle fat part of the distribution is kind of gone, right?
Yeah, and the middle case doesn't work for me because that says to me that, there's no point keeping money. Like it's lost its store of value property. Therefore, I need to take money out and put it somewhere else.
You definitely have to think in terms of expectations for the future. There has to be a bid over time, like a consistent bid, not consistent, not the same level all the time, but there have to be more and more people interested in storing more and more of their wealth in it. You're 100% right about that.
And so I put it as inevitable it overtakes gold.
Yeah.
But if you give me a percent, I'd say 50-50 over maybe a decade.
For
Bitcoin to overtake gold.
okay.
Over a decade, I'd say 50-50.
On the time frame, yeah.
Yeah, but I could also see it happen in the next 4 years
Absolutely.
because it just becomes this thing that everyone suddenly gets and understands.
So when people ask me why it's better, when people ask me about that question, when clients do, for example, I respond with a question, which is, why is gold better than Bitcoin? And the only answer that I ever get is that, it's physical and I can see it and it's tangible. And then, of course, I have to respond that, yes, one of the key parts of my journey with Bitcoin was the realization that it's 180 degrees opposite, right? The best money has no physicality, no use other than as money. And it took me a while to actually internalize that conclusion. Some people get it faster, for sure. It took me a while.
But you can just say to these people, okay, so you still buy CDs. You don't use Spotify. You still order DVDs. Like everything. It's like this is the one John Pfeffer said to me. John Pfeffer said to me early on, who himself was Orange Pill by Wences, said to me, he said, in 250 years, when we're all flying around in our Millennium Falcons, are we going to be sending large yellow rocks to each other, or are we going to send Bitcoin? It's like, of course we're sending Bitcoin.
Yeah, I
Like,
love
it's
that.
only fucking natural.
I love that.
I think another interesting thing to say to these people is that people like you, like gold, are buying Bitcoin. But people who would never buy gold are also buying Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Like, I would never have bought gold, but I bought Bitcoin. My son would never have bought gold, but he's buying Bitcoin. There's all these other people who would never have bought gold, but they're buying Bitcoin. Only gold people buy gold.
I think there's definitely. I think you have to segment the population, but you're absolutely right that there are buckets of demand for Bitcoin that do not exist as demand for gold. I'm, by the way,
But they exist for the same reason as gold exists.
sure. Yes. Yes. Look, I'm one of these guys who's like hard money assets great. I would not be surprised if both Bitcoin and gold accrue a similar amount of market capitalization over the next number of years. So what does that mean? That means gold, let's say, doubles from 15 trillion to 30 trillion, and Bitcoin goes from whatever, 1 and change trillion to 15 trillion. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so the multiple on
we're
Bitcoin is
catching it.
enormous,
Yeah.
and the gap is closing, and yet, gold can still go up. I don't really care one way or the other that much if gold goes up or doesn't.
You can answer if you want.
No.
It might be a client wanting to buy Bitcoin.
I think it's my kid's school. So the public school has gotten very good at robocalls, messages. If he's late, I get a tardy notice via the phone. It's actually smart. I mean, people pay attention to their phones more than they would pay attention to
Their children. So listen, I'm on my third or fourth cycle now. I sat down with my friends. I said, you should buy Bitcoin. They've not bought Bitcoin. I sat down again, said, you should buy Bitcoin. And they were always like, am I too late? Every question, am I too late? It's too expensive. Blah, 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 blah. And I know now I need a new sales pitch for them. I know I do.
Okay.
And I think Mark Moss just helped me. And it said it's about understanding the game of money.
Yes.
Is that you need assets and cash flow. Whereas I think, sorry, I'm tapping the table. Most of my friends or people I know are not in Bitcoin. They're purely thinking of wages and how they can get 10% pay rise because of the house they want to buy their wife. And they're always trapped in that kind of hamster wheel. And sometimes they outperform inflation, sometimes they don't, but they never build that density of capital that gives them breathing space. Apart from, in 25 years, they pay off their mortgage and then they might sell their house and downsize. By the way, I've started to see some of this. People who are downsizing, parents of friends who are downsizing to live off that capital.
Absolutely.
But they have to downsize to be able to afford their retirement. And
Happens all the time in my neighborhood, by the way.
right.
Which turned over from, these bungalows that people built up and added onto, and then the kids moved out. And then, what was, I don't know, $100,000 asset is now $1 million plus asset. And they just exit.
There you go. And I think one of the things I'm going to change is try and explain the game to my friends. It's like you cannot escape unless you're building assets. And assets aren't just your home. But there aren't many assets that you can get £20 worth or £100 worth just here or there. There's just not many. But Bitcoin is one of those. And I think I'm going to start with that one and start explaining to them. And I think I'm going to be saying to them, listen, you're thinking of entry and exit price. All you need to be thinking about is entry and accumulation and nothing else.
One of the things, I like that pitch. I really like the...
Oh, I'll have to tell them a lot more with that.
Well, I really like the element of you can buy any percentage, right? You can stack daily. You can buy small pieces. You can buy large pieces.
It's not like buying that second home where it's like a big whole consideration.
Right. It's much easier to build your position, to take territory over time. I like that a lot. The other thing I like a lot about what Mark articulates is leverage, is using debt. He's probably more aggressive than some. He's more aggressive than I am. I'm always generally telling people to be cautious. But
in fairness to Mark, he did say, you said debt is a good tool, but Mark was fair. He said 90% of people shouldn't be using it. They don't understand it.
Right.
They don't understand the leverage.
Yes.
They'll get wiped out.
Yes.
But for 10% of people, understand their risks, understand their risk tolerance, understand where they could get wiped out, that's good.
Let me ask you a question about unit bias,
Uh-huh.
because you mentioned, people think I think you mentioned people.
I think it's an
late.
issue.
And the recent email from Satoshi referenced something along the lines of, he picked 21 million because that would be a reasonable level, for a currency in the world or something like that. Please correct me. But I wonder if he was thinking, I think some people think that he was thinking of like, parity per coin, like dollar Bitcoin. And I wonder if he was thinking of sat parity, because it was obvious that, each coin was divisible into 100 million sats. And obviously those are two very different levels in terms of scale. And yeah, I mean, as a community, we have failed to change the unit. I think it's fair to say. I think the exchanges have not helped us with that. Mm-hmm. They could have changed the unit, but it doesn't help their, altcoin casino business. And SAT is very far from a single Bitcoin. Times 100 million is a big jump. But yeah, look, I agree with you. It's an issue, which is why one of the reasons why the ETF is cool is you can just buy shares in ETF, which have a lower price.
All right, hot take. I don't think Satoshi understood how big this could be as well as how Finney did.
Agreed.
I think Satoshi thought of this as cool tech, and he was a little bit cypherpunk about it. And if you go via the white paper, I'm not going to reinterpret the white paper. The white paper was very much about peer-to-peer commerce.
Yeah.
I don't believe at the time, and therefore, for me, Satoshi wasn't thinking years ahead. When this hits $100,000 a coin in like 15 years, there's going to be a unit bias issue. I don't think he thought about that at all. I think Hao realized the potential of this even more so than Satoshi.
Yeah, I think one of the quotes that I think back to
I think it's reasonable though.
On the Satoshi side, was one CPU, one vote, right? Mm-hmm. When he said wrote one CPU, one vote, it makes you think, oh, he didn't get that, ASICs were going to happen.
No.
Which means he didn't get that the scale was likely to reach what it did. But, we just don't know.
No, it's pure guessing. The unit bias thing is an issue. It's good for the ETF people. It's not good for headlines, because the headline isn't the BlackRock ETF share is $120. The headline is Bitcoin's hit $100,000. A lot of people just go, the unit bias has two problems. I can't afford one, and I'm too late.
And shitcoins are cheaper.
Yeah.
I mean, quote unquote, cheaper.
Yeah. But the great argument against shitcoins are cheaper. Okay, which one? You mean Bitcoin Cash? Okay. Well, why does Bitcoin keep going up and Bitcoin Cash is doing this?
No, and I totally, I obviously don't believe that, but I think that's people jump to that conclusion when they initially see Bitcoin.
Yeah. But it's about getting that across. And I think the point is we have to get across is this goes up forever.
Forever, Laura.
Forever, Laura. No, but I think that's a really important point. It goes up forever. Like, there's no limit to where this goes. It's not like, oh, yeah, like in 4 years, like, no, we're done. This is going to drop now. Like, this goes up forever. You have to understand the math. You have to understand very early. You have to understand inflation. But this goes up forever. And so all you need to think about is your entry.
Agreed. That's what people have to figure out. They have to do the work. Every cycle, some percentage of them do the work. By the way, I think that my ilk, financial advisors, wealth managers are doing the work. I'm skeptical that they're actually buying or that their clients are accounting for that much of the volume right now.
Where do you think it's coming from then?
I have a feeling it's more retail and hedge funds, to be honest with you. I have a feeling that it's more... I'd love to see good data on this, but I have a feeling that they will be a larger portion of the market 6 months from now. But that right now, all of those who have done the work already are just front running it. And so they should, and make the latecomers pay up for those precious sats because they're worth a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I need the data. But it's an amazing pipe that's gone into the Bitcoin system.
it has changed the market structure. I think it has, other than perhaps Fred Krueger, nobody anticipated this. Zero Bitcoiners anticipated the amount of demand that would come this fast via these ETF channel.
In fairness, people were pumping out that chart, the gold ETF one, saying, look what happened after the gold ETF launched. And
Which was essentially was a 10-year bull run, basically.
yeah. Which will be interesting to see if we actually have the same. We don't have a bear market. But I guess the inelasticity of Bitcoin is why we have bull and bear markets, whereas gold is elastic-ish.
Yeah, I think I am optimistic for the day that we don't have cycles in Bitcoin, and also I am not going to assume that we're there until I see it. Warning, don't get wrecked.
It is a bit weird though, because we are in a bull market essentially, because we broke the all-time high, and it doesn't feel like.
Did we, Peter? Did we break the all-time high?
Yes.
So I think I'd take the other side of that view. I know I'm a wet blanket, which is that
It's not inflation adjusted.
exactly. And for the whole first decade of Bitcoin, inflation, let's just accept CPI. I know we shouldn't, but just accept it for a minute. If CPI was negligible through that period, I think even CPI was something like 20% net from prior cycle to today. So I think of all-time high as like
78K is or something like that, yeah.
Exactly. You know the numbers. Danny knows.
So you're betting the all-time high at the purchasing power.
Yeah, that's how I'm thinking about
What
it.
about if you valued the all-time high at the relative cost of the individual of buying it? So CPI has gone up, real wages haven't gone up. Did we then break an all-time high at maybe 64,000?
I like that argument. It just
Because
goes to show everybody's cost of living is different, and
Yeah, I think you got to say what is the all-time high? Is it the purchasing power or the cost of the individual to buy it? I think it's the cost to buy it, because that's what you're looking at.
that's where the capital comes from.
Yeah, and it's got more expensive because real wages haven't gone up. Unless the majority of net buyers are those closest to the spigot, then it's got cheaper. And if it's Larry Fink and his friends, that's probably the case.
Exactly. If you're talking about, number of coins getting bought at the margin, let's be honest, it's rich guys who've had their stocks, their equities, and their real estate go up, and they have giant portfolios, and they're saying, oh, okay, fine, I'll allocate 2%.
The fuck, I can do this.
I'll peel off pieces of my multi-$100 million real estate portfolio.
I'll buy some magic ETF money.
Yeah, why not? Exactly. But Bitcoin is for everyone.
Bitcoin's for anyone, not everyone.
Not every. Oh, fair.
It's not
Very
for
good.
it's not for Craig Wright.
You're right. You're right. It is for anyone who's willing to take the plunge, which has gotten easier.
Who can take the plunge?
Yeah. Well, I interviewed Gladstein last week, and that's a big part of his message. He simultaneously realizes that most of the world does not have capital to save, but also most of the people will be better off in a monetary system that doesn't cheat them all the time.
That's the thing I've been trying to get my head to and understand, because we've traveled so fucking much and we keep going to these bloody places, right? And everywhere we go, people talk about, I've heard so many people talk about Bitcoin, it's bottom up, it's going to help people. And it's just not, it's not true. Bitcoin is not bottom up. It is adopted by people in the middle class. Absolutely everywhere you go. Yes, there will be people on lower parts of the socio-economic ladder who will buy Bitcoin, and it will raise them up because somehow they put some money by. But most people will live in hand to mouth. They can't fucking afford it. Yes, there will be some rich motherfuckers who will get in and protect some of their billions, but most of them are ignoring it. It's the middle class who have the education and the disposable income to do this and are driving this. And we will build out the middle class and we will be middle out. I absolutely 100% fundamentally believe this. And therefore, I believe when somebody's arguing about Bitcoin against it, Peter Schiff or fucking whoever online, they're arguing present state against somebody who's arguing end state. So end state is that there is enough Bitcoin in a country and enough of a shift in the economic system where Bitcoin backs it that makes a positive, better, fairer system. But that's the state you have to argue at. People argue in different states. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I agree with you. You know, your view of who's using it now, who will use it 5 years from now, you know, what does the economy overall or the political economy even look, you know, like a decade or two from now? Very different things. And people, I don't even know how you know, the longer I go on, the less I know, I guess. I mean, I used to have firmer views about how I approach that issue when talking to people. Now I just try to listen and understand where they're coming from. Because the notion of this thing being the base of the monetary system is still so far-fetched for most people, right? I just don't know if that resonates with your average Bitcoin interested or curious person. In other words, you're right. And also, I don't know if it's useful for talking about Bitcoin with most people. It is useful for talking with Bitcoiners.
No, it probably isn't. It probably isn't.
It only works for, it works for autists like me.
Right, do you want to go get some food? You hungry? Unless there's anything else on your list.
Always. No, look, I sort of soft pitched you an idea for an episode, which was my husband is an autistic Bitcoiner, which I thought would play really well, and we could get into that. But
I'm going to go do that with your wife.
Yeah, well, we could do that at some point. That's that might be a longer conversation.
But like your autism's mild.
Agreed. But my son's is more pronounced than mine.
Okay.
And mine is more pronounced than my father's.
Right.
Which is an interesting story, in my humble opinion. I don't know. So I find it interesting because it's my family, but I don't know if anyone else will.
Yeah. I mean, I'm intrigued.
We can talk about it.
Yeah, we could talk about it. All right. Do you want to go and eat?
Sure.
Buy Bitcoin by Andy Edstrom.
Or just don't read it and just buy Bitcoin.
Or that. Do that. Exactly. Or say you read it. Don't read it, but say you read it.
Good to see you, brother.
Likewise, Peter. Pleasure. Always.